The modern format has had some incredible tournament results over the past 2 months, with multiple regional championships concluding over this time period. In this video, we are going to go over those results and where the format stands moving into the new year. With multiple large modern tournaments reaching their conclusion over the past couple months, I figured this would be a great time to go over the results. Modern has rarely been in this good of a position meta-wise, and with that, it is appropriate to take a deep dive into some of the numbers. The format is in a spot where we have a solid triangle of checks and balances within the popular decks of the format. Mid-range aggro beats control, control beats fast all-in combo, and fast all-in combo beats mid-range. And we have been seeing this play out with tournament results. While sometimes it is interesting to look at the individual snapshots of each tournament's top 8, I believe that these numbers are best broken down by each deck's combined win totals, their records against other decks, and then most importantly, I like to see how many copies of a deck make it into the top results of these tournaments. Individual players may run hot with a list, but the totality of the results give a better picture as to how decks perform. This helps account for varying levels of players and their individual card choices, but also helps us not solely focus in on outliers within these datasets, though these definitely will be monitored in this video, as it is too much fun to ignore at times. Boros Energy has been on a bit of a roller coaster ride in big tournaments for the past few months. It has both been the most popular deck to play, the most hated out deck in the format at times, the most beloved aggro mid-range deck in the format, and over the past 2 weeks, Boros Energy has snuck itself back into the fold of being the best deck against the top decks in the format. Just look at these numbers from these tournaments. First, the RCs from Japan, Europe, Canada, and the US. Not a single sub 50% win total against the top decks in the format. While we have seen interesting variations of the deck, for instance, a list from Daniel Toledo that had 2 Mana Ties in the main deck to take down that regional championship in Europe, the deck has mostly been a stock list. Here are the numbers from the regionals from South America, China, SEA, and ANZ. It is a similar story from these tournaments as well. Shockingly, Domain Zoo played a much bigger spoiler in these regionals, as Boros Energy only had a 36% win percentage against Zoo. Still, when you look at the combined numbers, as we shall the rest of the video, you see this. Boros Energy had a 50% win percentage against almost every deck in the room. And more specifically, it had a positive winning percentage against all the most played decks. I think this comes down to a few points. First of all, most of these tournaments probably had adjusted their sideboards to deal with the rise of Affinity players, Titan players, and free spells, whether that is Simic Ritual, Jeskai Blink, etc. in the format. With only 15 slots to work with, focusing in on Boros Energy when your list may be much weaker to other decks in the format makes less sense if you are expecting other lists to be more represented. Boros Energy is always going to have a high floor. Guide of Souls, Ocelot Pride, Flage, Goblin Bombardment, and a Johnny might be the strongest backbone in the format right now, and the numbers are showing it. While I mentioned earlier that we would not solely focus on top 8 results, it is hard to ignore that over these 8 tournaments, Boros Energy placed 12 copies into top 8s and had 1 win. Continuing on from the most played decks at the recent regional championships, we have Izzet Affinity. This deck has proven to be resilient and powerful. Weapons Manufacturing and Pinnacle Emissary have made the deck have 2 win-out-of-nowhere lines. More specifically, Kappa Cannoneer being cast as early as turn 1, and the Weapons Manufacturing producing enough tokens that, when blown up, deal 2 damage to any target, usually kills the opponent in 1 shot, with the like of Engineered Explosives destroying all the tokens, Arcbound Ravager sacrificing each token, or Claws of Gix doing so in a much slower fashion, and of course, Kappa Cannoneer just runs over the opponent. If we take a look at the numbers, we'll see a consistent pattern. The deck struggles against all-in combo lists. Luckily for Affinity, that really is just Amulet Titan in terms of the most represented decks in the format. Yes, like all the lists, Boros Energy has shored up this matchup. Affinity still has good matchups with the rest of the top decks in the format, as you can see. Even on the expanded matchups of represented decks, it really only struggles against the all-in combos of the format, such as Neoform, Ruby Storm, and Broodscale. It should also be of note that I believe that the Quarry Steelcutter Wizards lists have been pushed into the Affinity category as well. This is probably due to Thoughtcast being a similarly played card between the lists. These decks, like a lot of the format to be honest, have started leaning on Quantum Riddler, and being as the deck is playing the Wizards package, there are a more reactionary set of cards for the deck to work with. Flame of Anor is consistently online here, which is very potent. In fact, one of these lists finished second at RC Vegas, piloted by Joseph Puglisi. Apologies for butchering the name. Affinity had 11 top 8 finishes in these tournaments and took home 1 win as well. The archetype has shown itself to be resilient and explosive, which as long as Mox Opal stays in the format, means the deck will be a consistent top finisher in the modern meta. What is there to say about Amulet Titan that I haven't already said in previous videos? Amulet Titan might be the most hated out deck in the format currently. For those that may be new, hated out here means that the decks tried to pack more sideboard hate and a certain amount of main deck interaction specifically for this matchup. Game 1s against the deck are difficult, especially in tournaments where you don't know what your opponent is playing, or non-open deck list tournaments. The core of this deck, of course, is Amulet of Vigor, Primeval Titan, Summoner's Pact, Teleria West, and a versatile mana base of bounce lands, Urza's Saga, lands that copy your Titans, lands that find your amulets, lands that copy your lands in the graveyard, etc., etc., Shifting Woodland, Aftermath Analyst. The best Titan players have a path to victory in most scenarios, and tripping them up on their poor draws are where you can even out the margins a bit. In the regional championship tournaments, Titan continued to show how powerful it is, having a positive win rate against all but 2 of the top played decks in the format. The lists right now that are starting to creep up on Titan are lists that either control the board / graveyard or go faster than Titan. Blue decks that can play newly cemented blue all-star Strix Serenade do well here, as well as Ruby Storm and Belcher, which combo off faster in a way that Titan has had a hard time interacting with, even out of the sideboard. Boros Energy does best here when it can land Blood Moon before Titan can combo off, or if they can then play Wrath of Skies, which does a good job of clearing off the amulets which the deck tends to rely on. Add that enough decks play incidental graveyard hate to deal with the abundance of Flage decks in the format, and Titans can sometimes have a tough hill to climb. This being said, Amulet Titan still had 7 top 8 finishes and 1 tournament win over these regional championships, and still managed to put many, many more in top 32s. Domain Zoo might be the most interesting deck of the represented decks in the format. Most of the players on the list have very opinionated stances on what the deck should run in its list outside of the core of the deck. That core, of course, being Scion of Draco, Leyline of the Guild Pact, Flage, Territorial Kavu, Monkey, Doorkeeper Thrall, Leyline Binding, and Lightning Bolt. Yes, that is in fact most of the cards here. Players have inserted around these pieces everything from Quantum Riddler, Null Drifter, Winter Night Stories, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and Teferi Time Raveler, and some amount of your mother's spaghetti. This will change how many copies of Consign to Memory you will run in the main deck, as well as how many copies of Stubborn Denial you will run between here and your sideboard. With that, the deck is powerful enough that it has game against everyone, yet at the same time has game against no one. See these results that are shockingly close to the 50% line. While playing this deck personally, it feels as though you draw too many lands, which is why so many lists have been playing around with which of the Riddler Drifter Stories package best fits for them to try and push through the clumps of lands the deck tends to deal with. At times you feel as though you are the best deck in the room. This usually means that you have tempoed your opponent with a Leyline Binding and Doorkeeper Thrall into hasting of Flage, or managing to land Scion of Draco early with Leyline of the Guild Pact to make your threats feel invincible. If they have an answer to your threats, you lose as you continue to flood, or you just win, as Flage from the graveyard becomes your get-out-of-jail-free card. The threats themselves are powerful enough here that this deck has to be on your mind, but the overall record at these regional championships of 981, 982, and 18 is about as staggeringly 50% as you can get. Because of this, I think only seeing 1 top 8 is pretty fair for this deck despite how many good results you'll see in online challenges, but you can definitely see this deck scattered among top 32s at regional championships, as it almost finishes the job. Prowess is a powerful archetype. That might be the most bland statement I can make in any of these videos. This being said, good Prowess players can brute force their way into top finishes. The deck is more complicated than it may seem, as timing your Prowess creatures, more specifically Slickshot Show-Off, after establishing a Dragon's Rage Channeler for card selection is key to winning most of these matchups. This deck is generally the fastest in the room in terms of winning and losing, which for a modern player looking to have time in between rounds to reset and focus for the next match is quite appealing. What is wild is how popular this deck is in comparison to how bad it is against the other best decks in the format. Prowess is essentially the opposite of Boros Energy over these tournaments. Its closest matchup here is probably Izzet Affinity. Both decks are ships sailing past each other in the night. Looking at the results, Prowess did manage to post 5 top 8 results in these regional championships and are strewn around the top 32 lists as well. One thing this deck has had a hard time fighting against currently is Vexing Bauble. Prowess is at its best when it can use Mutagenic Growth and Lava Dart to storm off on their Prowess creatures in one big attack. Vexing Bauble is currently in the main deck of plenty of lists and the sideboards of plenty more. This stops recasting Lava Dart and initially casting Mutagenic Growth and Mishra's Bauble. And while that doesn't interfere with the Prowess triggers of the creature, it does take away an extra damage from the Dart, an extra card drawn, and the pump from the Growth. Ew. Jeskai Blink played more matches than any other of the 7 best decks in Modern. It is consistent with great interaction and threats, having a spine of Phalia, Riddler, Flage, Solitude, and Ragavan will give you a puncher's chance against most of the decks in the format. In some ways, it was only a matter of time for players to land on this archetype, which really started showing up on the regional championship circuits with little to no representation at the Modern Pro Tour, as players there, if they were on Blink, stuck mostly to Esper or Orzhov. One thing this deck gets to take advantage of is playing Teferi Time Raveler, which forces your opponent to play on your terms by stopping their instant speed interaction while turning your sorceries into instants. This plus playing Prismatic Ending and Wrath of the Skies gives you plenty of options to deal with your opponent. The results here are a little stunning considering how many results we have of this deck being played, but Jeskai Blink and Domain Zoo are not that dissimilar. Both decks have near 50% win margins pretty consistently, with Jeskai also only having 2 decks it has a 50% or better win rate against, ironically, Domain Zoo and Izzet Prowess. Though Blink in most ways is better at brute forcing a tournament. Jeskai Blink had 7 top 8 finishes and a shocking 4 regional championship wins so far this season. You can also find plenty of results further down the top 32s of these tournaments. It may not have the most individual decks in these top 8s, and I tend not to place weight on the top end results as you will see plenty of one-off performances in some of these top 8s, but the win total is staggering and very impressive. Esper Goryo was one of the darlings of the Modern Pro Tour, with 50 decks consisting of 16.7% of the total field at the tournament. Pros love taking advantage of quickly having access to magical Christmas land of turn 2, more likely turn 3 or 4, Atraxas and Grizzlebrands to refill their hand with more interaction to take over the game. Add the fact that the deck could take advantage of then newly printed Quantum Riddler, and it was a match made in heaven. Since then, the deck has been something the format has had to account for, and the results have shown it to still be resilient, but definitely in the lower end of the best decks in the format. The deck does poorly into Affinity, Energy, and Domain Zoo. Granted, in this case, Zoo has the best answers in terms of Leyline Binding and Doorkeeper Thrall. Psychic Frog is still a great threat and engine for the deck, but it has fallen off as one of the best threats in the format that it once was, though having a free discard outlet will always be potent. The deck has a good matchup into Jeskai Blink, Prowess, and Amulet Titan based on the numbers. Considering how well these decks are represented in overall play rate as of late, Goryo's may be a good hedge if you are expecting to see an influx of the decks of Jeskai Blink, Prowess, and Amulet Titan over the next influx of tournaments, though the deck did only manage a couple of top 8s over these recent RCs. Some things to consider. Dimir Midrange and Azorius Control were not represented as much over these 8 tournaments. Eldrazi Ramp actually performed pretty well against the top 7 decks, with only having poor matchups into the usual suspect of Amulet Titan, which no Eldrazi or Tron player wants to see, and Izzet Affinity. It would be interesting to see expanded results from Wizards of the Coast on how well Ramp did against the rest of the field. The deck that had the most polarizing matchups was easily Simic Birthing Ritual-less. It absolutely crushes Amulet Titan, Domain Zoo, and Jeskai Blink, but gets crushed by Boros Energy, Affinity, and Prowess. Check out our last gameplay video for some Simic Ritual action, where it showed off how it can really take over a game with Abhorrent Oculus. The deck had 3 top 8 finishes and multiple top 32s at these regional championships. Other note, if numbers do not add up to 100%, this is because I did in fact round up on these percentages. With thousands of matchups, there are plenty of decimal points, and points to be made about them. What do you think about these results? What decks will you be playing in the future? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching us here at MTG Scoundrels. If you enjoy our content, please be a friend, tell a friend, of course like and subscribe, and we will see you all next week.